Hey everyone, I'm Nadine and welcome to Bookish Nook. Today I'm doing Your Life in Books Tag, College Edition. And I first seen this over at Ginger Reads Lady and she created it, so I will link that down below. So essentially this tag consists of questions surrounding your books that you've gotten in college or university. Just before we begin, I want to state that I started university with a double major of psychology and English. And then around my third year, I realized that I wanted to get my PhD in psychology, so I dropped English down to a major. So my answers are going to be a mix of psychology textbooks and English novels. So the first question is, find an author with the initials of your name. So I went with, for N, Latin via Ovid by Jacob Nienhuis. I had a hard time finding an author with the letter N, so I went with this one. And for B, I went with The Secret Garden by Frances Burnett. I read this book for a children's literature class that I really enjoyed. So the second question is, find an anthology that you really enjoyed, and for this question I chose The Bloody Chamber by Angela Carter. This was a fantastic book that I can't remember which class I had it for, but it's filled with a bunch of really dark and sensual retellings of classic fairy tales, from Puss in Boots to Bluebeard, and this was really dark. So the third question is, pick a classic that you enjoyed reading, and I chose The Awakening by Kate Chopin for this question, and a lot of people that I know didn't like this book, and I thought it was really fantastic and sort of like a very mundane, simple story about a woman not in love with her husband anymore and what she goes through during this time period. It's a really small, short book, and it was fantastic. The fourth book is the hardest book I had to get through, and that was Pride and Prejudice by Jane Eyre. I hated every second that I read this book. I don't know why. I could not get into it. I just couldn't stand the characters, the writing style, nothing. I couldn't identify with anything, and I tried really hard, and I managed to get through this, and it took me a lot longer than it should have. I think I'm going to try to pick it up later in my life, because maybe I can appreciate it later, but right now, I hated it. The fifth question is, find a book that you read ahead for past the assigned readings, and I chose a case book of Child Behavior Disorders by Christopher Carney. This went with my abnormal child psychopathology class, and it sort of has individual real cases of children with the disorders we learned, how it manifests, and the possible causes and treatment possibilities and outcomes. I really enjoyed this. She had only assigned a few of the cases, but I ended up reading all of the cases in this book because it was super interesting, and I would recommend this book if you're just looking to understand a child disorder and why they're acting that way. This is a perfect, fantastic, quick and easy read to understand some of these disorders. The sixth book is Pick a Book You Never Finished, and that is The Inheritors by William Golding. And I cannot stress how much I hated this book. I took this book was from a contemporary British literature class that I enjoyed overall, but this book, oh my god, this book, I hated every second of it. It's about Neanderthals, and it's got this weird style to it. The story was just so bland, and the characters were bland because they're Neanderthals, and I couldn't get through it. And I have yet to pick up another William Golding book because of this one. So the seventh question is favorite book you've had to read, and I haven't read any classics on my own or any books that we covered in class that are my favorites. So I chose to change this question to my favorite textbook that I've had so far, and I chose the Clinical Psychology 3rd edition by Andrew Pomerantz, and this is a fantastic introductory textbook to different methods that are used in clinical psychology. It's super straightforward, and the chapters are divided nicely. I had a lot of fun reading this textbook, and it was definitely worth the price. The eighth question is, find a book that you've had to read more than once for different classes, and that is Frankenstein by Mary Shelley. I first read this book in high school, then had to read it 2 more times throughout university, and the first time in high school I didn't like this book, the second time I fell in love with it, and the third time even more. So now this is one of my absolute favorite classics. Mary Shelley's writing is absolutely beautiful, and so is the story. The ninth question is, pick a book you'd recommend to a friend, and I choose 1984 by George Orwell. I read this for my contemporary British literature class and absolutely adored it. This book is just so real and so interesting, and you wouldn't even know you're reading a classic because that's how fantastic it was. I wish I could go back and reread it for the first time again because it's such a beautiful story. I would definitely recommend this to anyone because it is so easy to understand and so straightforward. And the last question is, what is the oldest book that you've read? And I haven't read a really old book, so I went with Sir Gawain in the Green Knight in this Masters of British Literature. I read this for a early British literature class, and I struggled through it. But in the end, I did enjoy the story. It's very interesting, and once you get a grasp on the meanings and the type of language that it is, it's a really fun, almost fantasy story. So that's my life in university so far. I am currently in my 4th year, although I have to take an extra year to catch up on some classes that I missed when I switched over to do my thesis with psychology. So if you're in college or university, I tag you because I'd love to see the kind of books and textbooks that you enjoyed and hated throughout your university or college career. Bye!